The transfer portal stays hot. The Miami Hurricanes land a former Big Ten starter with power and versatility on the defensive line. From the 402 to the 305, Keona Davis. Welcome to the U.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Miami's defensive line is, I'm going to say, low-key, stacked with talent. And I know the Miami people are aware of how much talent is on the defensive line, but I want to make sure America knows, because I think people are assuming with the guys Miami's losing that maybe the D-line won't be so good next year. I beg to differ. So the Miami Hurricanes have landed tonight here, Saturday evening, a transfer portal commitment from full-time former Nebraska Cornhuskers starter, and boy, did he have a good, especially back half of the 2025 season. Keona Davis has chosen the University of Miami. He visited Miami back on January 15th. He makes his commitment official here on January 24th, and I emphasize the word versatility for the 6'5", 275-pounder, originally from Arizona. And I say that because this is someone who not only has experience, he started 12 of Nebraska's 13 games this past season, appeared in all 13 of them, but he also has the ability to line up inside as a defensive tackle and to line up on the edge. So this is a two birds with one stone type of situation, right? Miami was just seeking more defensive line depth on the end spots or in the interior, and in this case, you get both of them with Keona Davis. It is a schematic change for him coming from Nebraska's attacking 3-3-5 defense with 3 down linemen to Miami's very aggressive 4-2-5, but I think the staff determined that he can fit with this scheme and that Damian Lewis and Jason Taylor can really do wonders for him, and that Corey Heatherman's defense can really bring out the best in a player who came off a really, really good season. Keona Davis, by the way, has 2 years of eligibility left. Just completed his sophomore season at Nebraska. He led all defensive linemen with the Huskers with 32 tackles, had 3.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. And it's like, I was going through the splits of where he was lined up, and it's pretty even, him taking snaps at multiple different spots on the defensive line. So they really moved him around a lot. So I would imagine Miami's going to have the opportunity to do the same for him. He played 405 defensive snaps this year. That's top 3 among Nebraska's defensive linemen. And, you know, he earned good grades, especially second half of the year. The best game that Keona Davis played in, he had a 77.8 Pro Football Focus grade against UCLA, had a season high, I think career high 7 tackles and a sack in that game. And it was a little ironic because I think coming out of high school, he was committed to UCLA for a time, ended up at Nebraska, and I guess playing the team he was once committed to brought out the best in him this past year. So this is someone who, you know, again, really, really grateful to get this transfer commitment because, you know, Miami, of course, as we know, having to replace outgoing standouts like David Blay in the interior of their defensive line. And, you know, a couple guys you may have heard of in Rueben, Bane, who's a top 10 pick coming up in the NFL draft, and Akeem Mesidor, who's now being projected by a lot of folks to potentially be a top 20 pick in the draft coming up. So, yeah, Miami has done some transfer portal shopping at the defensive line. And, you know, they do have some youth, and we'll talk about what Miami has on the D-line, right? They have some youth there. There's no question about it. And adding someone like this heading into his junior season who has a full year of starts under his belt at a Big Ten program, is going to be really important. I mentioned the splits. Here's some of these stats courtesy of Kane Sport. Keona Davis took 192 snaps as a defensive tackle, 6 snaps at nose tackle, 116 snaps lined up against offensive tackles, 46 snaps lined up outside of offensive tackles, and 3 snaps where he more generally roamed the box. He only committed 1 penalty, by the way, according to Kane Sport. It's only 1 penalty, which, hey, I guess we could use more guys like that. I mean, one of the players he's replacing, David Blay, and nothing but love for Blay, by the way. I'm not throwing shade here, but it was like once per game he'd be called for offsides with contact. Like, it didn't happen once all year, it happened once per game. So maybe we'll cut down on some of those with Keona Davis coming to Miami. And I went down some Davis rabbit holes on YouTube. Wore number 97 at Nebraska. We'll see what number he wears at Miami. Really just relentless. It's difficult to block him with one guy. He does not give up on any play. There are certain moments where he'll track down, running backs from behind to make big tackles. I mean, it seems to be the sort of effort and a guy who's going to fit in with that ESV defense that Miami likes to play. And I know for Davis, as it was for the other defensive linemen that Miami has already landed in this transfer portal and the guys who are coming in from high school, the opportunity to be able to play for and learn from coaches like Damian Lewis and Jason Taylor, Miami's tandem of defensive line coaches, was really attractive for him. So let's talk about Miami's defensive line, because I think this group has one of the higher ceilings on the entire team. You want to keep it locked right here. We got a new Miami Hurricanes commit, and we're only getting started on Locked On Canes. Folks, FanDuel is officially in playoff mode, and there's a couple of big NFL games coming up on Sunday. And every game during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get into the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boosts give you more juice on the bets that you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. And every bet feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then you apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack on every NFL playoff game day. Folks, we are also proudly brought to you by TurboTax, because you know what time of year it is, guys. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or the guesswork. So instead of spending hours trying to figure out your forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every possible deduction. It's a huge time saver, and it gives real peace of mind knowing that an expert is handling it. So for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. And folks, make sure you check out the Everydayer Club All Access tier. You get exclusive episodes from me, one-on-one texting, exclusive newsletters. Try it. Click the link in the show description below or go to lockedoncanes.supercast.com and join the All Access tier of the Everydayer Club today. So, you think about what Miami has done in the portal on the defensive line. I know like the biggest of the headline makers was Damon Wilson, who Miami added, the former Missouri edge rusher who comes off a 9-sack season, was one of the better edge rushers in the entire country. Huge addition for Miami. I like what Miami's done in the interior, and in this case, a guy who can, play multiple spots on the defensive line with Keona Davis. But let's not forget Jarquez Carter from Ohio State, who Miami added earlier in this transfer portal cycle. So you add these new guys in addition to what Miami is bringing back. Ahmad Moten Sr., who, we wondered, is he going to test the NFL draft waters? He's coming back for his final season at Miami, which is huge because that gives you a guy with multiple starts under his belt at defensive tackle. Justin Scott, who took big steps forward this year as a sophomore, the former five-star recruit. He's, looking like one of the more ascending, high-profile interior defensive linemen. He's back for Miami this coming season. And I mentioned Damon Wilson on the edge. Marquis Lightfoot, who was really, really good, like playing behind Rueben, Bane, and Akeem Mesidor this year. Armando Blunt is someone we cannot forget about. Herbert Scroggins had some big moments. Booker Pickett Jr. is going to get more opportunities. He had some explosive plays this season. Hayden Lowe, don't want to forget about him. Someone who, we thought Lowe could have, I hate to make this comparison, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's Saturday night. We go a little crazy. But, I kind of thought Hayden Lowe in 2025 could have a Rueben Bane 2023 type of impact as a true freshman, but he didn't get that opportunity because he had a season-ending injury at the end of training camp. And now Hayden is fully recovered. He was practicing, by the end of the season during playoff time, so he's going to be back in full swing come spring practice, and I think Hayden Lowe has an opportunity to dominate next year. So I know that like the people who aren't in the weeds and following the program as closely as the everydayers do will look at Miami's defensive line and say, okay, they lost Rueben Bane to the NFL. That's a generational player. Like Akeem Mesidor, a generational player. He and Bane, arguably the best defensive end tandem who's ever played at Miami together. And, David Blay was an important defensive tackle starter that you lost from this year. Like, people would look at that and say, okay, how are you going to replace all of that talent? Maybe the defensive line isn't so good this year. Miami, from where I sit, is not rebuilding the defensive line. They are reloading the defensive line when you think of the players that they have. Like, I can't tell you 100% certainly who the two edge rusher starters are going to be. I'm assuming Damon Wilson's going to be one of those, and maybe Marquis Lightfoot will be the other, but maybe it's Hayden Lowe, maybe it's third Scroggins. Miami's going to be loaded this year, and I even somebody sent me a tweet or an X post, I guess we call them now today, like, do we have too many defensive linemen? How are these guys all going to get on the field? 2 words: violent rotation. Miami likes to rotate defensive linemen, in case you haven't noticed. They're going to get a bunch of different guys on the field. I mean, it was not as big of a rotation this year because it was hard to take Rueben off the field. Like, he didn't want to be subbed out. I think sometimes Rueben would, wave it off. I'm staying in the game. Played a lot of snaps this year. So did Mesidor. But I think Miami's going to have an even heavier rotation, and they're going to have some good players in the interior as well. Again, folks, I'm not saying you can automatically replace the generational impact that Bane and Mesidor had, but Miami's got the talent still to be one of the best defensive lines in the country, and I cannot wait to watch this unit play together. Man, I feel like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but here we are. Defensive line is a position that I'm not worried about heading into next year. All right, a bunch of things we're going to be monitoring on Locked On Canes. I do want to add, you guys know this by now, but I haven't done a show since Jordan Seaton, the offensive tackle, since he committed to LSU. If you were watching or listening to my show yesterday, I'm not surprised because I know that there was, I think at a time, some confidence in Miami, but I was really following the intel that was coming out of Baton Rouge and coming out of Eugene, Oregon, and it felt like Miami was probably running in third place towards the end, and he ultimately picks LSU for, reportedly over $2 million, which is a lot of money for an offensive lineman, but he's Jordan Seaton, one of the best defensive tackles in the country. So I'm not going to say this is about money. It is what it is. I would have liked to have had him here at Miami. I think Miami's offensive line is going to be okay, despite not getting Seton. There's enough talent in that room. But Seton did choose LSU. You may have known that by now. Another one, I see, like, there are these agitators, these internet trolls. Most of them are probably Florida and Florida State fans who combined, their teams did not win as many games as Miami did this year. Not even close. What do they have? 9 combined wins? The 2 of those loser fan bases. But, people are trying to spread this stuff today like, hey, maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to hire Mario Cristobal, and then Miami's entire roster is going to be in the transfer portal. Now, I guess, like, earlier this week, Brian Baldinger, and he said, like, I'm not reporting anything, but he, like, did say that, like, hey, the Steelers really admire Mario Cristobal. But it didn't go any farther than that, folks. There was no interview. There were no discussions. I don't think any agents talked to each other. And the Steelers hired Mike McCarthy today. Like, there was really nothing there with Cristobal. So if anyone was worried, because I did get a couple of texts over the last couple of days, like, hey, is it true Mario Cristobal's going to the Pittsburgh Steelers? I'm like, well, where did you see that? Did you see a Gator fan tweeting about that? Usually that was what happened. So, no, Mario's in it for the long haul. Miami is not only his dream job, but I think it's, the only job he would even consider at this point. Miami got close. They got to the national championship game. Cristobal will not get another good night of sleep until they win the Natty. And even then, a good night of sleep for him is like 4.5 hours, right? Good night of sleep for me is like 10 hours, but for Mario, it's a little bit different. And, we're going to be monitoring throughout the week the Darian Mensah situation with Duke. So he has a new hearing date on January 29th. They moved it up by 4 days, 2 business days. I guess that's something. So, January 29th, we'll find out, yes or no, if he's able to, enroll at Miami or if he's held hostage at Duke for a little bit longer. Most of us, and we'll talk with more lawyers this week, actually, because my friend Alan K. Fertel, who gave us tremendous analysis on this on Thursday, I was emailing him today, and he's like, hey, January 30th, we want to break it down after he gets a ruling. We're going to do that. Most of us expect this ultimately to end up with Mensah in Miami, but it's probably going to be expensive. Like, Miami's going to have to pay some sort of a settlement to Duke, but that's our prediction. We'll find out, right? This is, this hearing is taking place in Durham. If they get another Duke fan on the bench for that, like the original judge who's a season ticket holder for Duke basketball, and he's married to the Duke librarian. I don't know if they found another judge like that, but we'll be tracking that throughout the week, and we will January 30th, if not January 29th. 30th is Friday, 29th, when the hearing is on Thursday. We are going to talk to our legal expert, sports and entertainment lawyer, Alan K. Fertel. All right, so friends, thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Welcome to the Keona Davis. I think this adds a really important piece to Miami's defensive line, a player who had 3.5 TFL, 1.5 sacks, 32 tackles, which led Cornhusker defensive linemen this year, started 12 games this past season in the Big Ten. I think this is a really good addition, and we'll talk to you again. I'm going to do an episode tomorrow. We'll talk more about what the Mensah situation means for college football, because a lot of people are like, whatever they decide, that judge, like, he might be setting precedent that changes the direction of college football forever. We'll talk about that on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.